promoted because they just didn't want to do it. They just didn't want to upset the boxing board of control. So very, very difficult times. But I was doing it for me and to do well in the sport, and I just wanted to become world champion, whether that be here or abroad. And luckily enough, the Americans was more advanced at women's boxing at the time, and they took me under the wing, and I was offered some great fights out there on some great bills. And it was never about money. It was just about trying to get the female sport recognised. And my inspiration was the likes of Anne Wolfe and Layla Ali and Eva Jones-Young. There's so many women to name. Deirdre Gorgity, the Irish girl, was my inspiration. I saw her fight Christy Martin on the Frank Bruno Mike Tyson undercard, and Deirdre became a very good friend of mine, and I was honoured to box on the same bill as her when times were hard and when we was doing it for no money. And to look where it is now because of our perseverance is just absolutely brilliant for women.
Yeah, and you mentioned that before, getting those big fights in the USA and the championships and the accolades that came with it. Did you almost have to be a sort of pioneer? Did you almost have to be your own promoter, your own eventer in terms of entrepreneur, in terms of drawing a crowds, drawing attention, getting the fans in the door and sort of such to your events as such? Was it almost the promotion was as much as part of the training, the preparation for the fight? Was it so much invested to try and obviously get those gate receipts and get people in the door to watch and support you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you're not only training for a fight, you're actually promoting it, you're managing it, you're trying to do everything, and it's really, really difficult. But I'd seen Deirdre go through it. So Deirdre Gorget is an absolute icon for Irish women boxing, and for people in England too. What she did was unbelievable, and I just wanted to make that better. And like I said, to do that, you had to be your own manager, your own promoter. You had to sell your own tickets, and you just couldn't get any doors open in the UK. There was a few small promoters that did it. Joey Pyle and Roy Cameron. They was all behind me, but it just wasn't televised like it is now, and they just really was so against it. But a lot of them that are doing it now are the same people that wouldn't help me or Deirdre or any of the Kathy Brown and the girls that came behind me. So yeah, it was very, very, very difficult, but it sense of achievement even more so because you wasn't handed it on a plate. You had to go out there and get it for yourself.
And I suppose becoming a champion on foreign soil, in terms of that, it's no easy sort of a feat and sort of such,
No.
In terms of going in the back door and being, dare I say, being the villain of the piece in terms of that. But I suppose you don't get things handed to you in a plate in a silver platter in terms of women's boxing. You almost have to go in and spoil the party. And was that a sort of daunting task, those sort of walk-ins to a crowd that maybe were 90% maybe against you in terms of that? And obviously, because the traveling support, maybe a small faction coming from your home place to sort of support you, and probably some of the biggest nights of your career at the early beginning in terms of achieving your goals and your aspirations. But was it just psychological? Did you just zone yourself out and just imagine there was no one there, just the four sides of the ring and you and your opponent?
Yeah, I mean, I just used to imagine when they was booing that they were shouting for me. So when they shouted for her, I just pretended it was for me. You've got to sort out. You're not going to take travelling support, but the crowd was sort of still mixed at that time in the 90s and the early 2000s. The crowds were. It was just more of a novelty bout. So when Lennox Lewis fought Vitaly Klitschko, it was me and Lucia Riker that opened the show. So it was more of just a novelty bout, and I was used to being on the road, and I'm used to having to fight for everything that I did and I achieved. So it didn't really bother me. But now the women have got the support of the promoters and the managers and the TV companies, then they still must feel pressure too. It's really hard. Women's boxing is not still as accepted as maybe people think it really is.
Yeah. And how did your counterparts, your males, in terms of your Roy Jones Juniors, your Sugar Shane Mosleys? I'm thinking some of the prime time guys back in that sort of the mid '90s era. Your Bernard Hopkins, I suppose the Mexicans probably wouldn't have related Morales because they had poor enough English, Morales and Juan Antonio Barrera, but coming across those guys, meeting them on the undercard in certain terms of some of the big names, were they very much appreciated and very respectful towards what you were doing in terms of women's boxing? Did some of them leave a lasting mark on you? Would they go out of their way, maybe a Roy Jones or a Sugar Shane or someone like that, to say hello to you?
Yeah,
Or
I mean, I boxed on some of the biggest bills in the world. Same bill as Roy Jones Jr., Prince Nassim Ahmed, Mickey Ward, Klitschko, all the big fighters. And every one of the fighters were very respectful because, let's be honest, I could fight. And I lived the right life. I was in training camp all the time. The fighters wasn't the problem. The problem was the promoters and the managers. And just to get, once you get on them bills, you think everything's going to be just like it is for the men, and it isn't. You're still miles behind. But yeah, the fighters was always brilliant. I'm still good friends with Ricky Hatton to this day, and we're both going to the Hall of Fame together, but under very different circumstances. I wouldn't change. I wouldn't want to be around now. I don't think. I'd rather have done what I did then because the legacy's bigger, and my fulfillment was to defeat the Boxing Board of Control, which nobody, and I mean nobody, give me a chance. And I think the fighters respected the fact that I did take the board on and I did beat them and I did make them accept women's boxing. And like I said, it's still not accepted 100%, but hopefully the next generation and the next generation after that will change that.
Mm. And I suppose Jane achieving and becoming a champion and becoming a world champion, and then coming back home to the UK, back home to home style. Did you notice a difference in terms of a level of popularity, in terms of level of support, a level of funding? Did life become easier for you when you became a world champion, when you came back to the UK for
No, because I mean at that time, even though I had the license, there was still promoters not willing to put you on the show, so you still had to make your career abroad. And I was around in the era when you had Anne Wolf and all Riker, all the great women fighters. So we was doing what's happening now in England and Ireland. We was doing that in the 90s, and we was doing it at a pretty good level. But yeah, the fight just went on right up to 2007 when I retired. You were still fighting to get on the show in the UK, and it was literally impossible until the money come into it and the TV started backing. And just typical of boxing, once money comes into it, then everybody suddenly likes women's boxing, and we all know deep down that that's not really how it is. The women have still got to work 5 times, 10 times harder than the male fighter would.
And I suppose before I move on, Jane, to one or two topics, the Hall of Fame this year, 2024, has came about. When did you first get inklings that it might be on the card, that this year could be the time that you could be going into the Hall of Fame? Or was it a complete surprise when you got the phone call or the letter or email or recognition that was coming your way? Or was there inklings that it was maybe it could have happened the year before? Or did you get any sense that this was about to happen?
I had absolutely no idea. The phone call just come from Ed Brophy out of the blue, and it was just like I'd been hit by a bus or a train. It was really a shock, a real shock.
Yeah.
And when you look at the names in the Hall of Fame, and then I thought it might have been a wind up, but it really, really